Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Virendra Daphne and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT, CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in the series of interviews. Today, I have a pleasure talking with Brian Ferris, CDAO of Loyalty New Zealand. So, Brian, welcome for this interview series and thanks for being with us. Okay. Before I go on to any of these questions, Brian, can you just brief about yourself, your roles and responsibilities? Yeah, that will be great for the audience.
Sure, no problem, Virendra, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. So Brian Ferris, I look after technology and data and analytics for Loyalty New Zealand. So I have two roles, CDAO and CTO. I run those two separately. I've been at Loyalty New Zealand for 3 years now. Prior to that, I was in Europe for 12 years and had roles in companies like the European Central Bank, where I was a solution architect there, Heineken in a global enterprise architecture role, and at Nike, where I ran enterprise data and analytics for EMEA for them. So some interesting times in Europe, lots of really good learning, and then came back to New Zealand 3 years ago to this role at Loyalty. Very exciting role. It's one that attracted me back. Loyalty New Zealand has been in business 25 years. It's one of New Zealand's best known and best loved brands, and it has a huge and fascinating data set. 80% of New Zealand households going back 25 years. Really interesting if you're a data geek like me. So my role here, I started as the CDAO, looking after data and analytics, seeing how we could really make the most of that data asset while protecting it and looking after it. And then a year after that, I picked up the CTO role as well. So I look after technology too. I run the two quite separately. They are two separate teams because they've got very different goals. But I find it's really useful because it gives an end-to-end overview of data. So it really helps break down some silos. So it's been a fascinating role and really exciting. It's a big and interesting team. We have about 20 data engineers, 20 data scientists and analysts. Pretty high powered. We've got 4 PhDs, 8 masters in there. So it's really fun, this amazing data set and a really high powered team to get some exciting value out of it. It's pretty cool.
Okay, that's great to listen, Brad. See, I'll just take this discussion forward, okay? Today, the CDOs have to make a lot of strategies, okay? Even if you say when Microsoft entered the gaming the marketplace, they entered with Xbox as a partner and called it as a market strategy, right? So there are 1,000 strategies, each one of it plays, and center of it is a data, right? So how do you like to say anything that role or what strategies that CDO or normally develops, or what is your view on strategies, or what strategies you develop?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and I may have something of a controversial view on it. I don't believe technology and data should truly have their own strategy. So I don't think the CDO or CDAO should have a strategy. Sounds really odd, so let me explain. Because I think the risk of when you talk about the CDO strategy or the data strategy is it becomes separated somehow from the overall organizational strategy. Then you start talking about the business strategy and the data strategy as if these are two separate things that can exist without one another. I view it as like a coin. You can't have the heads of a coin or the tails of a coin. That it's one thing, and they need to be that close. So for me, the strategy at its fundament for everywhere I've been in these sort of roles, including Loyalty, is to take that data asset and use it as effectively and safely and ethically as possible to further the overall organizational strategy. I mean, that sounds a bit cliche and everyone go, yeah, of course that's what we're going to do. But what I see in a lot of organizations is that's not what happens. Actually, the CDO can end up on their own journey. To give an example of how that can show up here, we have some initiatives like our Data Integrity Initiative and our Tech Debt Initiative. Well, they're jointly sponsored by myself and the CMO. Our chief customer officer, she is now, use the right title. So we're KPI'd and bonused and measured on those. So for her, tech debt is a critical business initiative to further her tech debt reduction, that is, of course, not creating more of it. So by doing that, we don't have a separate strategy. We just have a whole lot of the pieces of the overall strategy are data components to enable it. And that mindset permeates right down through the organization. And then so where we've got offensive things that we're doing, we're trying to use our data to really bring value to our members. We want to personalize, we want timely, relevant offers. If we want to do that, there's a bunch of things that fall out into my space with the data engineers and analysts, but they're not doing it for the sake of it. They're doing it to try and get these offers, which means as the overall strategy moves, all of ours does as well. And likewise on the tech debt, we're only replacing tech debt if it's relevant to the organization and it matters. So that it drives a different mindset. Same defensively, why are we putting governance in place? If our CCO is not driving it and saying, we need to do this better, I need better data integrity to drive my comms, what's the point? Then you get into that whole problem of selling the strategy and if you're trying to do that, I think you're already lost. It should be the pull from the rest of the organization because you're just driving the overall goals. So that's, I say it's a little bit of a different twist on things, but what I've found is it's very effective because you don't get any of these, as I say, silly conversations about getting buy-in or trying to justify budgets for data or analytics or data literacy as against a marketing initiative or a supply chain initiative, because they're not separate. It should be wrapped into whatever that business priority is. Hey, here's all the things we need to do in data to make this effective.
Yeah, Brian, I think that's an interesting perspective, Brian, because you're saying it's very integrated with the organization. You also spoke about marketing. You said head and tail of the same data strategy. I think that's quite insightful. Let me take this discussion even forward from strategy to value, even though you have said a couple of sentences about value. See, if you look at the, there's a data value, okay? And if I have to say one example in one line, the US TV maker, DirecTV, now they said, how do we get the value? We only collected the data of the people who moved the homes and gave our dish TV there. Okay, so it's a specific data that gave them value. Okay, so how to derive value from data. Okay, and what is the view of your view of data and how it can value or how it can be measured?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and probably I think the heart and soul of successful CDOs and unsuccessful is how well this gets answered. And it can be a challenging one. So I have a point of view on it, of course. So I've heard the analogies quite a lot that, data is the new oil. And I actually disagree with it in one level, but I think it's a really good analogy in another, that crude data is like crude oil, and crude oil is useless. No one uses crude oil for anything. It's of zero value until it's refined and applied to a purpose. So you can't put crude oil in an aircraft, but you can refine it into avgas, and then it becomes useful over there. Likewise, if you need petrol or bitumen for the road, now the two aren't interchangeable. Don't put bitumen in the airplane. Very bad idea. Likewise, pouring avgas all over the road to drive on, very bad idea. So I think it's the same with data. In its raw form and just collecting vast amounts of it, it's not useful. And I think a lot of organizations fall into that trap of, hey, we'll just collect a vast, it's probably more like a swamp than a lake of data, throw some really smart people at it, like data scientists, and magic will happen. It'll be incredible. And there's a lot of frustration when that doesn't occur. So for me, the value happens when it's in front of the right people at the right time to make a key decision. For me, the impact moment is when an organization, whoever in that organization, makes a decision to do something. And if you've then applied data to that so that decision becomes better, then it's value. That's the only moment when that data is valuable. So in the TV example, it's deciding where are we going to offer these dishes. We could send out offers to 10 million people, or we could really, really target the people that are interested and we're going to get value from what we're doing. So, and often that's very down in the middle of the organization. And in many organizations I've been in, large and small, particularly large, it's often not understood very well actually who's making those decisions, when they're making them, and what they're making them with. So to get value out of the data, I think that's the critical bit of work you've got to do first, to say, if these are our corporate KPIs, what are the decisions that actually pull the levers that make it happen? And then that's where you focus all your effort. That's where you get your data in place. And that then gives you the measure. So you're not trying to measure, how many dashboards got looked at, or how many views, or what's the size of our data, or any of that, which may or may not be any relevance. If you've said, hey, an absolutely critical thing is DIFOT in a supply chain, we've looked at the decision making and frankly, it's rubbish. Right, we've really focused on it. We're putting timely, relevant data in front of the right people, and you see DIFOT improving, boom, there's value. And then again, there's no selling, hey, you should give me more money because dashboard views went from X to Y. No accountant cares. It's a really tough sell. But when you say our number one KPI was DIFOT, delivery in full and on time, and our initiatives helped move that from 86% up to 90%. That's dollars, that's interesting. And it ties back to my other point. It shows you understand what matters to the CEO and the organization. And you're not just doing a lot of waffly stuff that no one really cares about. So I think those proxy measures, unless you're selling data products, if you're selling data products, then clearly you measure the value of it, but it's nice and easy. Normally it's indirect, and you've got to be tightly aligned into the rest of the organization, and the value should then fall out very naturally.
I think that's quite comprehensive. The one thing I liked is you brought in new concept. You started with data and the oil, and then you said it's a crude oil. I haven't heard that before, but I like that analogy because you are deriving analytics on top of it. Then you came to results and numbers and real value. I think any youngster is listening. That's quite comprehensive answer, and I like it crude oil rather than oil. Okay, let's
Just on that one, I'll give you a little example to build on it. So an example for us, one of the a typical, because we do a lot of marketing activity and we're really trying to make our targeting relevant. It's easy to send millions of emails to spam. We don't want to do that. We want to put it into inboxes that people go, yay, that's exciting. And typically, if you can get to double figures on a unique open rate on emails, that's considered very, very well targeted. Well, we had one last year that we were doing, which was 50% unique open rate. So we'd used our data to, that's just unheard of. You just don't get numbers like that. And that's an example that I don't have to say, hey, I'm justifying why we're doing all this data work. Our CCO is able to look at that and go, that's working. That's value. How do we get it even higher? And I say, well, the data quality would really need to be better to get that higher. Right, well, there's where we need to invest. That's real value that I don't have to sell anything, so it's a tangible kind of quality and value measure. And I think each organization needs to find that for themselves. That's obviously a very relevant one for us. But each CDAO needs to understand what that is in their own organization.
I think that's very well described or put forward. I'll just go take this discussion even a little further, because we have spoken about strategy, we have spoken about value, you have even said about your role. If we take this further, because data is spoken about in all domains, okay? But there are two domains which are like, there is a heavy discussion on it. One is a finance and one is a healthcare. Yep. In the finance, starting from, there is a prediction modeling, whether people will return the loans, mortgages, and everything is happening. Okay, in the share market also, they have started using now AIMO. You go to healthcare market, they're trying to see cancer predictions, they're trying to see patient improvement predictions, this AIML, and it's everywhere. So if I just put a question around these two markets, okay, there are products and services, okay? Do you think, is there something, a common foundation of analytics or of data analytics or even for the services? Or do you see something common in these two segments, or how the trends, any of your views?
Yeah, 100%. I see a lot of commonality, both across segments and markets. Obviously, there's some distinct things, but I think there's more similarities than distinctions. And I see it back over time. When I think back over my career, sort of, God, I don't really want to think about how many years it is, but going back into last century, actually, a lot of what we're trying to do and a lot of those commonalities are the same the whole time. We've just got better technology. So when I look at things like fintech, healthcare, the finance sector, the absolute fundamental basics remain the same of what is the overall business outcome you're trying to achieve? How do you line up behind it? So that's in any business. You can start with that. And I think that's really important, even though the outcome might be different across different ones. You know, it could be a better detection of cancer rate. It could be a better identification of vulnerable people that are going to may have high risk of defaulting on a loan. But the question remains the same. And the ability to answer it, I think, remains the same. And this is where the biggest commonality goes in. You need the right data at the right quality at the right time. And it's really boring and it's unsexy, and it comes back to data quality and data governance and all the things that are not exciting at all, like AI and ML and really cool things. But the fact is, it's like building an amazing statue or something. You know, it's absolutely useless if it hasn't got a solid concrete foundation to sit on. Now, no artist wins an award for building a solid concrete foundation to put your statue on. But the fact is, that's the most critical bit if you want it to be there in a few hundred years.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the most common critical steel threads that goes through, and that whether it's healthcare, finance, supply chain, anywhere, you keep coming back to that boring bit that organizations that don't do those foundational pieces well and don't get them in place get frustration and don't get the success. And it ties into my second thing, which I think particularly in those industries, but it's across all, is the ethical framework. I think there's a massive commonality there of really questioning what you're doing and why you're doing it, and not just could you do it, but should you do it? You know, cancer and healthcare is a classic one. Yeah. I don't think anyone would argue that if we could use ML to get the detection rates up from the scans and things from 70% to 99%, that would be wonderful. But what about if that same data is used by insurance companies to then decide who they will and won't insure? Okay, well, things start getting grey. So there's no easy answer to these things, but I think the ethical framework's critical. And it goes hand in hand with the data quality, because as we've seen in a number of examples, even with good ethical intent, you can create very, very bad outcomes when you're training off bad data. You know, inadvertently, you can make some horrendously bad ethical outcomes. So I think what we see there is actually, even though finance and healthcare say, okay, these are two totally different, professions, skills, the fundament for a CDAO in them, I think you've got a lot more in common if you had one from a big finance institution and one from a big medical research facility, and I haven't been either, but I suspect you'd find you've got way, way more in common than you have different, and the building blocks stay the same. And like I say, I think they stay the same everywhere in my experience.
Yeah, I think that's quite insightful, or brilliantly put. Okay, you said 4 or 5 things, 4 or 5 very important things. You started with objective and results. You said what to do, why to do, or even should I do it? You went to later. Or initially, you started with objective, then should I do it? Why should I do it? Then you went to frameworks, then you're even going to data quality, then you're going to results. I think you're putting a perspective rather than a technology. You should stick to your objective, governance, quality of data. So it's not a technology question, but it's your business process, business outcome kind of a question. Okay, I think that's a great narrative. Let's go to
just building on that a little bit, Virendra, I think that's a critical point you pulled out. I think if you've got all the foundational pieces right, you could probably get a great outcome with 5-year-old technology. I truly believe that. You could get a really awesome outcome if you've done everything else right. I think the opposite doesn't apply. If you haven't done all the basics right, and you could go into the future and get technology from 5 years ahead, you're still going to have an abject failure.
Yeah. I think that's a very big statement you're making. If you get the fundamentals right about the business objective or the process, okay, 5-year-old technology will also give you a results. I think that's very big statement, and many of them will think about this. And this is one of the takeaways of this discussion, because this will make anybody think. I think you're making a huge sense. Yeah. The another part, if I take the discussion forward, okay, from the domains, the world had changed since the Apple had changed the value from product to customer experience. Okay, so the value shift is there from product to customer experience has happened, and since that has happened, everybody has mobile, and this marketing technology, marketing had changed. Even analytics had changed. Okay, now there is no simple marketing; it's event-driven marketing. It's giving value to the customers. You get offers in your mobiles. You get 20%, 10% off. You get add-on things. You get things at your doorstep. So do you have any comment on this? Okay. So what are the current, where is this marketing and analytics is going on? Do you have any comment on this? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, some of it's probably slightly boring in the sense that in some ways nothing's changed. Yeah, again, if you can get something if I can put something in front of you that's really relevant and exactly what you're looking for and what you want in a way that you trust me, you're saying, thank you, that's not spam. That doesn't matter whether that's on a bit of paper or from a carrier pigeon or on a mobile device. Now, it hasn't changed in several hundred years. What has changed is our ability to do that at scale. So that if I put my CCO in front of one of our customers, she could have an amazing conversation with one of our members and really explain a whole lot of things. And they'd go, oh my God, so much value for me. That's exciting. The technology lets us do that at scale, that she's effectively having those conversations out at huge scale. Instead of 1-to-1, we can then go 1 to millions. Now, where that gets interesting, I think the absolute key with it is, again, fundamentals comes back to foundations and boring stuff. If you're not clear what your message is and your value proposition is, if I put you in front of one of your members or customers and you can't have a relevant message, don't scale it. Because if you're doing it badly 1-to-1, don't just amplify your problem out to millions to one. So what the technology allows is it allows you to get that scale, those really relevant conversations that it should feel like you're walking into a corner store that you've been shopping in for 20 years, and the person behind the counter says, hey, we've just got something new in that I think you would love. And you're, ooh, that's really exciting because you know me really well. So our devices allow that to happen in a very timely way if we understand all the things we need to about relevance, timeliness, the creepy line, and the analogy I use there, if you walked into your local butcher and he said, hey, I've just made a really cool new sausage that I think you'd love. Here's a little bit for you. I put a bit aside. That's wonderful. Thank you. I'd really like to try that. Now, if you were to come home one day and you found that same butcher, he or she, sitting in your lounge with the sausage because they've let themselves in your front door and they're sitting in your house and they're cooking a meal for you on the stove without you asking, he's probably gone over the creepy line there. That's not acceptable for your local butcher. So the things that change with the technology is those pieces that you've really, really got to think about and get right. I mean, with the mobile particularly, it allows you the geotagging. So you can now say, hey, you're walking outside a store that has a great offer, and I know you really like that stuff. Cool. Yeah. But we would need to understand, are you a person that's going to be freaked out by going, how did you know where I was? Well, I'm not feeling good about that. I'm feeling really freaked out. And likewise, it's got to be very timely and relevant, because I'm getting 500 of those things.
Yes.
That's rubbish. It's got to hit on point. So it's an enabler and a very powerful one, and can really open up possibilities. If you've done the basics right, you understand your member or customer, you understand what they care about, and you understand the channel and timing that interests them.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's one more thing, the one very important concept that you started with. It gives us to do things at scale.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's very important. Any youngster listening, okay, because it is giving us a power to do at scale. Then you even ended up with saying, if we know our customer, if we know the location, if you know what they want, then we can deliver tech value using these marketing trends or values. So it's like doing it as a scale, knowing your customer. Okay. So let's I think this is becoming a session for any aspirant CDAO. They can just tune into this one. Now let me take this even forward, because we have all covered 4 or 5 major pillars. We started with role, value, strategy, domains. We even spoke about the latest thing that you spoke about, the marketing trends. And now if I go to another one is culture. Everybody says digital transformation culture. Okay, this culture thing is a new buzzword, and everybody want to say now cohort. The agile has gone backward. It's the cohort now, and the new ways of working, new collaborative tools. Okay, people want to come on the mural boards and they devise the ideas and mural techniques and all. So how do you want to say how to develop a digital transformation with these collaborative tools?
Yeah, I'm one of those firm believers that culture eats strategy for breakfast type thing. So I think it's dead right. If you want to drive any transformation of any sort, digital or otherwise, ultimately it comes back to humans deciding to do something different today to what they did yesterday. And a group of humans is a culture. So what you're trying to do is change the thinking. And we know we're not logical, data-driven creatures. That's unfortunately not how we were either created or designed, depending on what your belief system is. But fundamentally, we react to things close to us, and then we post-rationalize. So we haven't got data-driven decisioning baked into us. And data-driven decisioning is at the heart of a digital transformation. And using all of the digital tools. So that would suggest, if you want to take advantage as an organization of data, of the digital transformation tools, of the mobile experiences, of web, of AR, ML, all of those cool things that can do amazing stuff, you've got to have your humans ready for that. And that's both inside and outside the organization, because digital transformation is not just inside the organization. Your members or customers also have to be taken on a journey. But let's focus inside the organization. I think that's the critical one. Again, it's not about tech, and it's not about tech for tech's sake, especially. There's got to be reasons for that digital transformation. So mobile is a classic. It's probably the cutting edge of, alongside AR and ML. And there's still organizations out there. I mean, I'm still seeing it that, geez, we need a mobile app, or we need a better mobile app. So we're going to go build one. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Why? What's the value proposition to your customer? Remember, well, I've got to have a mobile app and it should be awesome. Okay, cool. But why? What are they going to use it for? What are they going to do? It comes back to those things we talked about. And that comes back to your culture as an organization of how are you making these decisions and why are you making these decisions? Do the people making them understand the possibilities of the technology? If not, they're not going to ask for those cool things. They're not understanding that there's these great opportunities in mobile. So there's an education there. You've got to take the fear out of it. This is change. This is hard for most humans. Some not, but most yes. This has got to be a cool and exciting thing that seems relevant and valuable to them. So I'm talking again, still within your organization. why would I throw out my 20 years of experience and potentially make myself a bit irrelevant and go and learn this new thing where I feel like I know nothing? Why would I want to do that? In fact, why wouldn't I fight against that and try to defend my 20 years of experience? What would possibly make me? And that's all about the understanding, the learning, the value. And for me, a lot of that's driven the culture change, again, off those business outcomes. If you're understanding that these are tools to drive an outcome, and I can give you a very real example, going back to one of my big multinational days, we did pretty much exactly what we shouldn't probably. It was a lot of learning. And we decided we need a really sexy, awesome, cool app, digital transformation. We've got people on the web, we've got them in physical stores, but we don't know who they are. We can't connect them. Sexy app. We put all sorts of cool things into it. Actually, the killer functionality in that app that got everyone using it, that we hadn't even thought about, it just came for free, it just appeared in there, was when you made your purchase, it automatically recorded it against you. So if you ever had to do a return, you didn't need a paper receipt. You could just show your phone, it showed the receipt, you did your return, you change whatever. We hadn't even realized we'd put that in. We didn't understand that from our customer point of view, that was absolutely critical. So our culture wasn't thinking the right way. We were thinking, let's build shiny things, not, hey, what do our members need? What do our customers need? And the people that knew that, who were outside of tech and data, particularly walking the stores, that really understood it, we hadn't educated them. We hadn't taken them on the journey. So we hadn't had the cultural transformation you need to get this, where they would have said, we know what the customers want, and now we understand enough about tech and data to say, this is what you folks should be doing. And then you get a backlog of amazing customer value going into these digital tools, and you're not actually doing a digital transformation at all. What you're doing is a customer experience transformation that happens to use digital technology. And when you get to the end of all that value, you suddenly go, oh, people are talking about a digital transformation. I didn't know we were doing that. We were just trying to make it better for the member. It's a bit long-winded there, but I think what that all came down to was those people and changing the way you're thinking about technology on both sides. The non-tech folks, how to use it, and the tech folks, stop trying to build shiny things and actually deliver value.
Okay. I think that's also quite comprehensive, because if I just try to summarize it in 4 or 5 points, okay, you are trying to say it's like the entire digital transformation culture thing, okay, is going to say about the human. First thing is outcomes. There are behaviors, there is a technology, and there is a value that will come with the change of customer experience. So it's like 5 fundamental things. You're using technology, then you have business outcomes, you're changing the customer experience, and in the end, the entire journey will bring the business or digital transformation. Okay, yeah. if I'm able to put that
that's a very succinct way of putting it. And actually, the one other thing I'd suggest that builds on that, you've summarized it beautifully, is that, again, that takes us away, this whole idea of selling a digital transformation to senior leadership or any leadership. You're not doing a digital transformation, you're making a better outcome for your customer. They go, well, we don't have to sell that. If you've convinced me that this is, going to be better for the customer and therefore generate more revenue, why wouldn't I do that? You don't need to oversell that. So that whole get the leadership on board, I think, goes away when you've taken an approach like that. And then you get the culture change from the top down, which is obviously where you really need it.
Yeah, I think, that's also an important way of thinking. If it is a customer experience shift or product enhancement rather than digital experience, it also brings the business and the funds on the table. Yeah. Anyways, so So if I go this to the one of our last pillar, because we probably covered all major pillars. See, there is a lot of popular trends, and there are trends which are like going everywhere, AI/ML. Okay, and people say if AI/ML comes in a full flow, 80% of lawyers is going to lose their jobs because 80% of things are going to be decided by industry.
Yeah.
In India, they say now it's online teaching, that's everything. There are so much of thing that is going on. 20% of the teaching things will go away. Even there is saying smarter manufacturing is coming. So production jobs are going to go down. Anything that is repetitive will be taken over. Okay. And humans will never do a repetitive work, but only do the logic based. Okay. Now, if I put a very generic question to you, how do you see this AI/ML within next 5 years? And if I had to just say one sentence, when I was in 2013 and our budget was 3 million for AI/ML, we did not have a case, 2012 or something, we did not have a use case other than chatbot. At that time, right? So now it's a lot more matured and it's heavily grown. So if I put a very generic kind of a thing, how do you see this AI/ML in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important. And I think as with everything in the tech industry, what I tend to see is that we are a little bit like the auto industry, but not as honest. So the auto industry has a car show and they'll show a concept car that's what things might look 20 or 25 years from now. And everyone knows, and they do, a lot of it comes through, but they're not pretending that it's going to happen next year. I think the tech industry and the data and analytics is part of it. We tend to do a lot of glossy kind of publications about amazing stuff as if it's happening or about to happen, when really they're concepts that in 10 or 15 years will actually come to fruition. If we look back 10 or 15 years at what was promised then, a lot of that's very ordinary now. It's commoditized, it's normal. But there's a lot of pain and frustration and disappointment if you go back 10 or 15 years on things that couldn't deliver on the promises. So I think we'll see that a lot with AI and ML as it continues to grow. I think it's a very, very real thing. And where I'm seeing the most benefits and where I think it'll probably have the biggest impact is where we're seeing these capabilities baked into the things around us. An example is the Zoom call that we're on now. It's very normal. We can put the recording on and it will do a transcript for us. And it's pretty good. It's not far off. It's reasonable. That's very ordinary now. That we consider that as, that's not AI. That's just part of what you get with Zoom. Even going back, I don't know, it's hard to remember, probably 2 or 3 years, that was a little bit science fiction-y, that you could just have that. So I think what we'll see is things becoming normalized, and the value add will be because it's baked into something we're already doing rather than the kind of robot replacement. So I don't think 80% of lawyers will be replaced. I think potentially, and I don't know the numbers, 80% of the boring, menial, repetitive tasks that a lawyer did may go away, and therefore you'll get much higher output and much less of the drudge work. And they won't be using AI or ML to do it. They'll just be using a search function on their computer with absolutely no idea of what's behind it. Oh, I want to look at all the cases relating to, I need horses, carts, donkeys, and cars. It's a very odd case I've got. And something will troll back through the last 300 years in 10 different countries and bring everything back with a bit of a thought thing. That won't be considered clever. That's just a normal tool, no different to a carpenter's hammer or a screwdriver. So I think most of the value, I believe, will be coming into things we're already buying and baked in. And we'll see that in the data and analytics space. I believe the people that will make the biggest leaps will be the ones that are leveraging that really well to build highly automated data fabrics, which are going to allow then the data mesh concept. So what we've been trying to do with self-service, for instance, for 20 plus years, I think some of that's really going to start coming to fruition with the guided processes that will actually be powered by some very, very clever AI and ML, but no one will know it's there. You won't even know that that's what it is. So I think that'll be the biggest developments. There'll be some organizations that will do some very clever custom built things. We'll do some. But I think in most organizations, because you want to put your development into the bits that give you competitive advantage, there's a fairly small set of use cases where there's real value there. And a lot of the value will be getting rid of repetitive drudge work. Well, that's not where your competitive advantage is. So it can be something as dull as invoice matching, which now, again, we take it very much for granted. That's getting smarter and smarter. That could actually be a real advantage and cost saving for your business, although it's not going to sound particularly sexy and exciting. So I think it'll be the baked in capabilities over the next 5 years. Organizations, that what that'll mean for your CDAO, we need to be architecting differently to leverage all those capabilities. And from the ground up, it'll be a different type of architecture so that you're not needing so many data engineers or data scientists or analysts, because you've architected around some of these tools that have got that AI and ML built in, and freeing up your time on those things that are a real competitive advantage.
Okay, I think, Brian, that's a couple of very valuable points you put across. One thing I liked was you said not 80% lawyers, but the 80% of the repetitive jobs. Okay, another part you're saying already baked in that is going to happen. Okay, I think this has been quite comprehensively answered. And if I had to just say one sentence, a couple of lines about it. See, in banking industry, there are prediction models everywhere. Okay, but not a single bank is directly using the outcome of the AI ML model. See, if ML model gives a risk rating, ML model gives the mortgage rates, there are 3 individuals who take that output from ML, brainstorm on it for 4 days, and they say whether we can apply this mortgage rate or not. Yeah. So probably you're right that we'll get the baked testes, and we are not at a stage where we can allow machine to dictate the online terms, real-time terms. Okay. And we'll get the all repetitive and baked in things. Okay. So I think if I look at from this discussion, any youngster or even current CDAO, Brian has actually unleashed so many fundamentals. Some of his statements I'll remember for a long time. One of it is like, if you have all the fundamentals right, business outcome and everything, and you're still using a 5-year-old technology, you'll still do it right. I think that's a paradigm shift statement if anybody is living at large. And there are a few things he said about marketing at scale. Then even out the few of the strategies, many of you will find this discussion valuable, useful for even youngsters to CDO. So thank you very much, Brian Ferris, for joining us today. And for more interview series, I request you to please go and join CDO Magazine Tech. Thank you, Brian. It was great talking to you.
Absolute pleasure. Really fun talking to you. So thanks for the invite, Virendra.